Hi, everyone. My name is Mark Schwartz, and I'd like to talk today about IT and corporate social responsibility, or CSR. It's been quite exciting, actually, to watch all of the activities around corporate social responsibility lately. There have been some determined efforts around environmental sustainability, diversity, equity, and inclusion, ethical sourcing, and corporate ethics in general. It raises the interesting question of what role we do or should play in CSR as technologists, as IT professionals, and as a DevOps community. DevOps is built on a very extensible and flexible model. Really, it's the idea of fast feedback, of delivering something, monitoring how it actually works and what results it has, and then taking that feedback and feeding it back into the process to continuously improve what we've delivered. Because this is such an extensible model, we've seen the rise of things like DevSecOps, DevBizOps, FinOps, all of which really have to do with taking this basic fast feedback model and adding to it additional sorts of requirements or additional sorts of guardrails. What I want to suggest today is that we can actually take this model and create what you might call, I hate to say it, Dev Sustainable Ops or Dev Social Ops by adding social responsibility requirements into our cycle and by putting in place guardrails around social responsibility. I think even more interesting is that this model of fast feedback is something that we can also apply to other corporate social good efforts, even outside of IT. So that's what I'll be talking about today. Because we have limited time, I'm going to limit myself to just a few areas within CSR, although there's a lot more we could talk about. I'll be talking about environmental sustainability, diversity, equity, and inclusion, ethical sourcing, and I'll touch on some issues around ethics of technology. Who am I to be talking about CSR? Well, I'm an enterprise strategist at Amazon Web Services, and that means my role is to work with leaders of large enterprises to try to help them overcome some of the non-technical impediments to digital transformation. So often that's things like cultural change, organizational structure, organizational politics, governance models, investment strategies, and my favorite, bureaucracy. While doing this in my spare time, you could say, I started to poke around AWS to see what we had going on in the way of social good. And I became involved in some of our efforts, first around homelessness, and then around reskilling unemployed and underemployed populations and trying to place them in jobs. And while I was doing this, I became aware that companies now were very interested, especially at leadership levels, all the way up to the board level, were interested in what they should be doing around social responsibility. And since my role is to advise companies on the things that are important to them, I started to include some of these ideas, some of the things that I had been learning around social responsibility from my other activities. I should define my terms because this can be a little confusing. I'll start with corporate social responsibility, or CSR. That means exactly what it sounds like. Stakeholder capitalism is the idea that businesses need to be addressing the needs of a broad variety of stakeholders, not just their owners. So, for example, their workforces, the communities in which they operate, regulators, and so on. ESG is maybe the next step forward from those two. The idea is, it stands for environmental, social, and governance. And the idea is to put in place the controls, governance, process frameworks, incentives, training, all of those things around CSR to make sure that the company meets its obligations around those things. it's been becoming a major concern, as I said, for companies and for their boards of directors. So 45% of board members now say that ESG has become part of their agendas. 82% rank being a fair employer and a good corporate citizen as very or extremely important. Large companies, I'm talking about companies whose market cap is greater than 25 billion, 56% of them actually have ESG measures in their incentive plans. And 90% of S&P 500 companies now publish a sustainability report. That's a big increase over the last few years. ESG is becoming important to private equity investors and venture capitalists. And one reason for this is that the data is showing these days that companies that are good at environmental and social governance are also good at governance in general and return good results. S&P 500 has an ESG index, which has actually outperformed, suffered fewer losses, and recovered faster than the S&P 500 as a whole during the COVID pandemic. You might wonder what technology has to do with some of these social problems, as I did at first. So let me tell you about something that I learned in the course of researching homelessness. I didn't realize, you might not realize, that actually there's a good deal of permanent supportive housing available for people who are experiencing homelessness in major municipalities.